What if the world you know suddenly started bending in ways your mind could never prepare for? That's exactly what happened to me one night. A night that began like any other quiet, calm, unremarkable, but quickly spiraled into a living nightmare I couldn't escape. I had just finished my usual routine, locking doors, checking windows, and switching off the lights, the mundane comforts of safety that now felt hollow and meaningless. As I settled into my room, I noticed something strange, a shadow at the edge of my vision, too big to be ordinary, yet slipping away whenever I turned to face it. My heart started racing, my breathing shallow, but I told myself it was just my imagination. Yet the air felt heavier, charged with a presence I couldn't see, but could feel gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Then the first sound came, a faint, dragging noise, like nails scraping across the floor above me. But there was no one there. No floor above, just the silence of my empty house. I froze, straining to listen, and suddenly the shadows around my room began to stretch and warp, as if the walls themselves were bending, twisting into shapes that should not exist. My rational mind screamed to leave, but some magnetic force pinned me to the spot. And then it happened, a whisper, soft but unmistakable, calling my name from the darkness. A voice that didn't belong to any living being I had ever known. Fear surged, yet I couldn't move, couldn't turn away. My body was trapped in a paralyzing mix of terror and disbelief. The shadows coalesced into figures' faces contorted with silent screams, eyes hollow and staring, reaching out in ways that mocked every instinct I had for survival. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall, my heart hammering in my chest, my mind screaming that this wasn't real. That it couldn't be real, but the room was changing, walls folding in on themselves, floorboards twisting, ceiling lowering. I ran, but the house seemed alive, doors opening and closing on their own, hallways elongating into impossibly long corridors, each turn revealing something more grotesque than the last. I could hear footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate, like someone or something was following, matching my every move, anticipating my panic. And then the room shifted again, and I realized with a gut-chilling certainty that this was no ordinary haunting. Reality itself was fracturing, cracking into pieces that my mind could barely comprehend. Objects floated, lights flickered in impossible patterns, and every sound was distorted, echoing like a twisted symphony of madness. I was losing grip on what was real, my thoughts tangled in fear, disbelief, and an inexplicable sense of being watched, hunted, toyed with. As I rounded a corner, I saw it, a figure, tall, impossibly thin, its face hidden in shadows, moving toward me with deliberate slowness that made my skin crawl. I stumbled, fell, and scrambled to my feet, but the walls had shifted again, the path I had just run along now a labyrinth of impossibilities. My mind screamed for escape, but every door, every window, every familiar corner had betrayed me, leaving me trapped in a house that had become a living nightmare. And in that moment, I understood something horrifying. The line between reality and madness was gone, and whatever had entered my world was no longer content to stay hidden. It wanted to consume every ounce of reason, every shred of safety, until I was left naked in a reality that no longer obeyed the rules I had trusted my entire life. That night, I realized that when reality cracks, there's no turning back. Madness creeps in slowly and visibly until you are swallowed whole, and the only thing left is the endless, suffocating question: what is real and what is left in the shadows? This wasn't just a story I heard. It was a night etched into my memory, a personal descent into a kind of madness I struggle to explain even now. The events of that evening didn't end when the sun rose. They followed me, clinging to my thoughts, making me question every shadow, every unexpected noise. The world I woke up to felt fragile, like a thin sheet of glass ready to shatter at the slightest touch. The familiar comfort of my home was gone, replaced by a lingering dread. I would stare at the walls, half expecting them to bend again, my own reflection in the mirror sometimes seeming like a stranger. The silence of the house was no longer peaceful. It was heavy with unspoken threats, a canvas for the echoes of that terrifying night. I tried to rationalize it. Was it a waking nightmare? A symptom of extreme stress? I consulted doctors, described the experience in vague terms, fearing they would dismiss me as delusional. They offered explanations, sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hallucinations, logical terms for an experience that felt anything but. Yet, none of their theories could account for the sheer physicality of it all, the way the house itself seemed to conspire against me. The distinct alien quality of the whisper that called my name. These weren't just tricks of the mind. They felt like a violation of the very fabric of existence. My sense of safety, once a bedrock of my life, had been obliterated. Living with this memory is a constant battle. I avoid being alone, especially at night. I keep the lights on, not for fear of the dark, but for fear of the shadows it creates. Every creak of the floorboards sends a jolt of adrenaline through me. Friends and family notice the change, the constant anxiety in my eyes. But how do you explain that you've seen reality break? How do you tell someone you are haunted not by a ghost, but by the possibility that our world is not as solid as we believe? They offer comfort, they tell me it was a bad dream, but their words feel hollow against the vivid, visceral memory of that night. The entity, the tall, thin figure, is what haunts me most. I never saw its face, but I feel its presence in my peripheral vision, a constant, unseen observer. Was it a figment of my terror-stricken mind, or was it the architect of my nightmare? This question loops endlessly in my thoughts. Its slow, deliberate pursuit felt calculated, a terrifying game where I was the unwilling participant. It wasn't just trying to scare me. It felt like it was trying to teach me something horrifying, that the rules of our world are suggestions, not laws, and that it could break them at will. The encounter left me with a profound sense of vulnerability, the realization that we are adrift in a reality far more complex and terrifying than we can ever imagine. I've spent countless hours researching, delving into forums and obscure texts, looking for others who have experienced something similar. I've found whispers of its stories of non-Euclidean spaces, of reality glitches, of encounters with beings that defy classification. These accounts are often dismissed as fiction or delusion, but for me, they are fragments of a truth I was forced to confront. It seems I am not alone, but we are a scattered, silent community, bound by an experience too bizarre to share openly. We are the ones who have peeked behind the curtain and can never unsee what we saw. The most unsettling part is the change within myself. The fear has been a constant companion, but over time, a strange curiosity has taken root alongside it. I find myself looking for the cracks, for the inconsistencies in the world around me. A flicker in the corner of my eye, a moment of déjà vu, a sound that doesn't belong. I now see them not as random occurrences, but as potential hints of that other reality, the one that tore through my own. It's a dangerous fascination, a part of me wanting to understand the nature of the thing that terrorized me, even if it means stepping closer to the edge of that abyss again. I've considered moving, but a part of me is afraid that it's not the house that's haunted, but me. What if leaving changes nothing? What if the cracks follow me, ready to splinter my new reality at any moment? The nightmare has become a part of who I am, a lens through which I now view the world. It's a lonely existence, living on the border between the known and the unknowable, forever questioning what is real. So I continue to live with the echoes of that night, with the memory of bending walls and whispers in the dark. I share this not for sympathy, but as a warning. Cherish your solid, predictable world. Find comfort in the mundane, in the unwavering laws of physics. Because there are things in the shadows, things that exist in the fractures of reality, and if you're unlucky enough to see them, they will break not just your home, but your mind. You will be left, as I am, forever looking over your shoulder, waiting for the world to bend again. Thanks for listening. If my story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more explorations into the unknown. Stay safe and try not to look too closely at the shadows. What if every step you took led you deeper into a nightmare you couldn't escape? A reality that seemed to reshape itself just to trap you. That's exactly how it felt as I stumbled through the twisted corridors of my own house. It was suddenly unrecognizable. The walls bent like liquid, the floors rippled under my feet, and every door I opened led to somewhere I had never seen before. The air was thick, heavy, with an almost tangible presence, pressing against my chest, making each breath a struggle. Every sound, a distant creak, a whisper, a soft scuttle echoed like the house itself was alive, mocking my fear. I tried to rationalize, to find some logical explanation, but logic was useless here. The laws of reality had been completely rewritten. Shadows moved in ways that shouldn't be possible, stretching across the walls, forming grotesque shapes that danced and writhed, flickering in the corners of my eyes, disappearing the moment I tried to focus on them. And then the whispering started again. At first, it just called my name, but then it began speaking things I couldn't understand. Words warped and twisted, strange syllables vibrating in my ears, as if the very sound was trying to crawl inside my mind. I ran, but the corridors just stretched on endlessly, looping back on themselves. Each turn revealed new horrors I couldn't have imagined. Mirrors reflected not me, but a figure standing right behind me, watching, grinning in silence. Furniture contorted into monstrous shapes, crawling across the floor with impossible speed. And the walls, they were pulsing, breathing, closing in as though the house wanted to suffocate me. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding, but a horrifying clarity struck me. This was no ordinary haunting. Whatever this was, it fed on fear. It was reshaping reality to maximize my terror, to make me question every memory, every instinct, every sense I had ever trusted. I stumbled into a room that looked like my childhood bedroom, but it was wrong. It was too big, too dark, with shadows pooling unnaturally in the corners. My belongings were twisted, familiar objects turned into grotesque parodies, knives floated in midair. Books opened themselves to pages I didn't recognize, their words crawling like worms across the paper. I felt that presence again, closer this time, pressing down on me like a weight of pure malice. And for the first time, I saw it clearly, a figure, tall, faceless, and impossibly thin, moving with a grace that no human could match. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and its eyes, or what I thought were eyes, glared right into my soul. I backed away, heart hammering against my ribs, but the floor beneath me buckled, splitting like cracked ice. I fell, tumbling into darkness, the world twisting and spinning around me until I landed in what felt like an endless void, suspended somewhere between reality and madness, and in that void I could hear it whisper again. A voice that wasn't mine, a voice that didn't belong in this world, promising chaos, promising the collapse of everything I knew. It promised that escape was impossible. I clawed at the air, trying to reach some solid ground, anything real, but the void was alive. It moved and reacted to my fear. Every instinct screamed that I was being toyed with, hunted, tested in ways I couldn't possibly comprehend. Time lost all meaning. Seconds stretched into eternity. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, echoing in a loop that threatened to completely unravel my sanity. I tried to scream, but no sound came out, only that suffocating presence, the sensation that something unseen had its hands on me, probing, reshaping my mind. The figure appeared again, closer than before, still faceless, but somehow it knew every secret, every fear I had ever buried. It turned them into weapons against me. I realized with a cold, sinking horror that this wasn't about survival. Survival was never the point. It was about breaking me, dismantling the very concept of reality until I could no longer distinguish what was real from what was nightmare. And as I floated there in that void, the realization hit harder than any physical blow could. The madness wasn't just around me, it was inside me now. It was spreading, infecting my thoughts, reshaping my memories, until I didn't know if I was still myself or just another puppet in this house-esque grotesque theater of terror. The only certainty I had left was that nothing would ever be the same. Whatever had entered my life that night was here to stay. It was reshaping my world, my mind, my very existence until I was nothing but a shadow, lost in a house that was no longer mine, a reality that no longer obeyed the rules, and a nightmare that had only just begun. It whispered that it would always be with me, a constant companion in the ruins of my own mind, and I believed it. Because in that endless darkness, its voice was the only thing that felt real anymore. The whispers began to form words I could almost understand, telling me stories of other worlds, of other people it had broken. It showed me visions, flashes of shattered lives and minds undone, all victims of its cruel game. The faceless figure would appear in these visions, a silent observer in every tragedy, its presence a constant thread of malice weaving through countless realities. It wanted me to know I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last. My personal horror was just one small part of its eternal, cosmic symphony of suffering. It fed on the despair of every soul it touched, and now it was my turn to be the feast. I tried to fight back, to hold on to a piece of who I was. I focused on a memory, my mother's smile, the feeling of sunlight on my skin, the taste of rain. But as soon as I formed the image in my mind, the entity would corrupt it. My mother's smile would twist into a malevolent grin, the sunlight would burn my skin, the rain would turn to acid. It took everything I held dear and turned it into another instrument of torture. There was no sanctuary, not even in my own memories. My past was being rewritten, my identity erased and replaced with fear and pain. Then something shifted. The void began to solidify. I wasn't falling anymore. I was standing back in my house, but it was different. The walls were no longer bending. They were made of a strange, pulsating organic matter. The floors were slick and covered in a dark, viscous fluid. The air hummed with a low, guttural thrumming, like the heartbeat of some colossal beast. I wasn't in my house anymore. I was inside the creature itself. The realization was sickening. The house, the nightmare, the entity, they were all one and the same. It hadn't just invaded my home. It had become my home. And I was trapped within its living, breathing body. The faceless figure stood before me, no longer a distant observer but an immediate physical threat. It reached out a long, slender hand, and for the first time I felt a physical touch. It was cold, colder than ice, a cold that didn't just chill the skin but seeped into the bone, into the very soul. It didn't push or grab, it just touched my forehead. And in that moment I saw everything. I saw the universe from its perspective, a vast, meaningless playground of flesh and fear. I saw civilizations rise and fall, not through wars or disasters, but because it had whispered in the right ear at the right time. I saw the fundamental laws of physics as mere suggestions it could ignore at will. It showed me the truth that my reality, my entire existence, was just a fragile construct, a thin sheet of ice over an infinite ocean of chaos. And it was tapping on the ice. As the vision faded, the figure withdrew its hand. The house around me began to look normal again. The pulsating walls became plaster, the slick floor turned to wood. I could see the morning light streaming through the window. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought it was over. I thought I had survived. I stumbled towards the window, desperate for the reassuring warmth of the sun. But as I looked at my reflection in the glass, I didn't see my own face. I saw a tall, thin figure, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I saw a face that was blank, smooth, and utterly featureless. The nightmare wasn't over. It hadn't trapped me in the house. It had trapped me in my own body. I tried to scream, but the only sound that came out was a soft, sibilant whisper, speaking in a language that wasn't my own. The madness was no longer just inside me. The madness was me, and the game, I now understood, was just beginning. Thank you for listening. What if the walls around you were no longer walls? The floor beneath you no longer solid, and every sound you heard was a lie designed to trap your mind? That's exactly what it felt like as I stumbled through the nightmare my house had become, each step plunging me deeper into a reality that twisted itself with malicious intent. Hallways stretched endlessly, doors led to rooms I had never seen, and shadows moved with a life of their own, crawling along shifting shapes, and whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I tried to call for help, but my voice came out distorted, a hollow echo that bounced back from the walls like a cruel mockery. Objects around me obeyed no logic, chairs floating midair, mirrors reflecting moments that hadn't happened yet, and my own reflection grinning back at me, faceless and sinister. I ran blindly, heart hammering, every instinct screaming escape. Yet the house shifted beneath my feet, turning familiar spaces into impossible labyrinths designed to break me. And then I saw it again, the figure, taller than any human, impossibly thin, moving with a fluidity that defied the laws of nature, faceless, yet somehow knowing everything I feared, everything I had tried to hide from the world. Its presence pressed against me like a physical weight, suffocating, and for the first time, I understood the horrifying truth. It wasn't just haunting me, it was rewriting the rules of my reality, bending everything I knew to its will. I stumbled into a room bathed in darkness, the air thick with a metallic scent, and my surroundings began to warp, walls bending, ceiling twisting, floor folding like paper. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, repeating my name in a cadence that rattled my very bones, filling me with a terror that clawed at my mind. I tried to focus, tried to anchor myself to something real, but everything familiar had been stripped away, leaving only this grotesque theater of fear where my sanity was the prize being toyed with. Then came the movement, hundreds of shadows, writhing, converging, forming faces that were both human and monstrous, eyes hollow, mouths stretching in silent screams, crawling toward me, and I could feel them reaching, touching, probing my very thoughts. Panic consumed me, adrenaline surged, yet every escape route dissolved, doors vanishing, windows melting into walls, and I was left alone with the void, with the figure, with the whispers promising endless torment. And in that moment, time fractured seconds. Stretching into eternity, the void around me shifting, pulsating alive as if the house itself was feeding on my fear, reshaping the world around me to reflect the deepest corners of my mind. I realized with chilling clarity that I had become part of this nightmare, a piece in the puzzle of its sadistic design, and no amount of reasoning, no attempt at escape could save me. The figure came closer, and I could feel its presence inside my thoughts, whispering, twisting memories, rewriting reality until I couldn't distinguish myself from the shadows. Couldn't he tell which fears were mine and which had been planted by the malevolent force before me? I fell to my knees, gasping, my mind fraying at the edges, and a terrible truth sank in. Survival wasn't an option, understanding wasn't possible, and the reality I had trusted my entire life was gone, replaced by something alive, something hungry, something that had chosen me as its prey. The shadows closed in, merging with the figure, and I was swallowed by a darkness so complete it was as if the world itself had ended, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat. Echoing in a space that no longer existed, a reminder that when reality cracks, madness doesn't just creep in, it devours, transforms, and leaves you questioning if you ever truly existed at all, trapped forever in a nightmare that refuses to end. What if the nightmare you were trapped in wasn't just a chapter of your life, but life itself rewriting you into something unrecognizable? That's exactly what I realized as I stumbled through the ever-shifting corridors of my own house, now a labyrinth of horrors with no beginning and no end. Each step dragged me deeper into a reality that had abandoned all rules, all logic, all hope. The walls felt like they were breathing, pulsing with a slow, malevolent rhythm. The air grew thick and cold, carrying a scent of damp earth and something else, something ancient and metallic like old blood. The shadows moved with intention now, no longer passive voids of light but active predators. They flowed like ink across the floor, stretching and contracting, surrounding me, whispering in voices that weren't human. The sounds were a chorus of scratching, hissing, and guttural clicks, twisting my thoughts, preying on every fear I had ever buried deep inside. They spoke of failures I thought were forgotten, of insecurities I never shared with a soul. It was a mental assault designed to dismantle me from the inside out. And then the faceless figure appeared again. It materialized from the deepest part of the hallway, larger this time, more grotesque. Its form was unstable, like a glitch in the world, shifting and spasming. It radiated an intelligence that chilled me to the bone, a cold, calculating awareness that saw right through me. It reached toward me not with hands, but with the very fabric of the world itself. The air warped, space and time bending like clay in its grasp, drawing me into its control. I was a puppet, and it held all the strings. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere, distorted into a sound that was both me and not me. It echoed endlessly in the infinite corridors, a mournful alien cry. The walls pulsed with life, breathing in rhythm with the darkness that now lived inside me, a parasitic entity feeding on my terror. Objects around me became unrecognizable. A familiar armchair stretched into impossible, jagged angles, its fabric writhing as if infested. The mirrors on the wall no longer reflected my image but showed twisted, Nightmarish futures I hadn't lived, yet visions of myself with hollowed eyes and a permanent silent scream etched onto my face. Every room I entered was a puzzle of terror, a new stage designed to break my mind piece by piece. One door opened into a blizzard, snow stinging my face inside my own home. Another revealed a forest of pale, leafless trees that seemed to whisper my name. I tried to resist, tried to hold on to the memory of who I was, the man who had a life, a job, a family. But the figure was always there, sometimes in the corner of my eye, sometimes directly in front of me, whispering my secrets. It recited every insecurity, every regret, every selfish thought I'd ever had, twisting them into heavy chains that shackled my mind. And in that moment of absolute vulnerability, I realized the horrifying truth. Escape was never possible. Survival was never intended. This wasn't a game I could win. It was an execution. I stumbled into what appeared to be my living room, a desperate bid for some semblance of normalcy. But even here, reality was fractured. The floor was made of thin glass, cracking under my weight, revealing an endless, starless void beneath. With every step, spiderwebs of new cracks spread out, the sound echoing like breaking bones. Above me, the ceiling rippled like the surface of a dark pond, and shadows crawled along it like giant insects, following me with a patient, malevolent intent. Their movements were deliberate, synchronized. They were hunting me. Suddenly, the glass floor gave way. I fell, but the fall had no end. It was a dizzying, nauseating spiral through layers of impossibility. I tumbled through fractured memories and scenes of pure chaos, a city of bone, a sky of weeping eyes. The sensation of falling was constant, yet I felt I was going nowhere. Finally, I landed, not with a thud, but with a soft absorption into a space that was both nowhere and everywhere. Time had folded in on itself here, looping my moments of greatest fear and despair. I was forced to relive the initial dread, the chase, the fall, over and over, each loop more intense than the last. I could see glimpses of the faceless figure everywhere, in every fleeting reflection, in every creeping shadow, in every whispering echo that bounced around this non-space. And then it spoke. Not with words, not with a voice, but in pure thought, a direct and brutal infiltration of my consciousness. It didn't need language. It simply poured its meaning into my mind. Visions of cosmic chaos flooded my senses, galaxies crumbling, stars dying, the very concept of existence unraveling like a frayed rope. It showed me the utter fragility of reality, how thin the veil was between what we perceive and the howling madness that lies just beyond. It showed me the futility of my resistance, like a single ant trying to stop a tidal wave. I was now part of an endless cycle of fear, a battery to power this horrifying engine. My fight or flight instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to anchor myself to something familiar, a memory, a name, anything. But the house, the figure, the shadows, they were all one. A single, living, thinking entity feeding on terror, reshaping existence itself to trap me forever. The deeper I went into the labyrinth, the more I felt myself slipping away. My identity, my memories, my very sense of self began to dissolve, fraying at the edges like old cloth. I was becoming just another fragment of the nightmare itself, another ghost in the machine. And in that terrifying clarity, as my ego died, I understood the final truth. When reality cracks, when madness creeps in from the edges of the universe, there is no rescue, there is no waking up, there is no end. There is only the endless consumption of fear, the slow and methodical transformation of the mind, and the inescapable presence of something ancient, intelligent, and insatiably hungry. The last thing I saw before everything collapsed into absolute blackness was the figure towering above me. It was faceless, formless, yet its presence was so vast and absolute that it filled all of reality. I felt myself dissolve completely, my consciousness scattering like dust in the wind, merging with the shadows, the whispers, the very fabric of the house. I was no longer a prisoner within the nightmare. I was the nightmare. I was the creak of the floorboards, the chill in the air, the whisper in the dark. I was nothing but a disembodied awareness, trapped in a world that no longer obeyed the rules of logic or life itself. And then silence. But it wasn't the peace of an ending. It was an oppressive, living silence, pregnant with malice. It was a silence that promised that the nightmare had not ended, that it would continue, always, forever, and that I, like so many who had surely come before, was now a permanent part of it, an eternal echo of terror, lost in a reality that had chosen to consume me entirely. I am the whisper you hear in the dead of night. I am the shadow that flickers in the corner of your eye. Beware the cracks in your own reality. You never know what might be waiting to pull you in. Thank you for listening.